Hi, David.
Can we applaud? Okay. I've always wanted to ask, was that a period there was a lot of people who really tried to put David Bowie in the Ziggy years in with the Alice Cooper thing because of...
Isn't that absurd?
Well, it was because of
I think it was inevitable. I don't know. It's not absurd. I
Well,
mean, we
it's a
both
pretty
were doing
broad category.
Well,
but
you
people
know,
tend to
too,
do things like that.
Yes,
don't
they do have a tendency.
I kind of expected all that to happen. And I just trusted in my own conceptions that eventually we'd split off and have separate identities, Alice and myself. You know.
Worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean, just trusted in my own optimistic ideas of what I could do.
Are you these days that optimist as well? Do you see that much optimism in rock and roll? That was a very optimistic record for rock. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy's
Well,
saving rock, literally.
I'm pretty self-satisfied with my own individuality. I don't think I have to exert myself so much to explain that I'm not part of rock and roll. I have my own identity. I just use rock and roll, and I had to be very exaggerated in the beginning to defy people to put me into a category so that would leave me room to work in.
Now Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the spiders from Mars.
What is Ziggy?
Ziggy, I wanted to define the archetype Messiah rock star. That's all I wanted to do. And I used the trappings of kabuki theater, mime technique, fringe New York music, like my references were Velvet Underground,
Right.
whatever.
Suffragette City or...
It had that
street,
energy
you had
value.
the
I wanted
street.
that energy value, yeah. It was
Even the cover
a
had
British
the street,
view
yeah.
of American street energy. So Ziggy was, for me, a very simplistic thing. It was what it seemed to be, an alien rock star. And for performance value, I dressed him and acted him out. I left it at that. But other people reread him and contributed more information about Ziggy than I had put into him.
Right, they could write novels about that guy.
Right. I think basically because of the that I'd put 3 viewpoints into the album from 3 different areas. Maybe the character himself would appear, and then there would be 2 other statements by 2 other people, all on one album, which was kind of confusing. But it was, I mean, it was the way an author would write a book.
Yes.
Rather, I mean, it hadn't been utilized that much in records. And I
Forever.
had
And
trouble
they-
explaining
they
that it was
stayed
just,
spiders,
it was a
didn't they?
theater piece, that the spiders didn't really exist, that they only existed for the length, the duration of that character's life.
Right.
I was stuck with him for a long time. It took a long time to shake him off after I'd finished working with him, because people would relate to him more than David Bowie at the time.
Yeah.
It was still very hard for anybody to realize that a rock artist can go on stage and be a different
People
person
still-
every time he goes on stage.
They do that
Nobody
to
was
this
doing that.
day, though.
It need not be repetitive, right?
Exactly. You don't have to be the same personality every time you go on stage. And mine was more exaggerated.
There are no characters really involved with the last 2 projects other than David Bowie, I see.
with Low and Heroes.
Yes.
No, of course not. Because when I got back to Europe, before I could start getting involved with characters or narrative again, I had to define a new form of musical language.
And at this
Right.
point,
Hit them
Germany
all.
was really a part of you at this time. I mean, you...
No, that happened when I left America. As I was leaving America, I knew I had to get to an environment that was totally different to Los Angeles. So I thought of the most arduous city that I could think of, and it was West Berlin. And so I stuck
You
myself
picked
in
up
West-
everything and just sort of took a
I
flat
left
and
everything.
left and just went there.
Yeah, I left Bel Air, and I
Uh-huh.
left all my millions of videos, and then moving out of that to an area where I actually had to go down the road and buy food in a shop, actually learn how to buy a plane ticket, which sounds so sort of, you know, naive and trite.
It
For
sounds
most
like you-
people, because they can do those things.
Sounds like you dumped a lot of people along the way then that
Yes,
used to
I
do
did.
that for you.
I did. I reduced this whole incredible entourage that was sort of starting to develop down to 3 or 4 people that I worked very well with.
Is that sort of how you live now, with that sort of hub of people?
Yeah, well, I've my womb of Berlin, when it was a womb because of the wall. I guess it was all psychological to go there. I mean, I needed some kind
Protection
of womb.
of that
There's a
fortress.
tension there, too.
The tension there is terrific, and it forced me to reevaluate
I know that
my position in any given society. That
in
you know,
between Low and Heroes even, you took Iggy Pop to Berlin to make his record.
I think,
And,
yes, I think it's a very good therapeutic city for an artist to go to.
I wanted to
come
ask-
back to not the punk street level, but a real street level where you have to go and do things for yourself,
it's
where
not
nobody
made
will
up.
take any notice of you. I was totally anonymous in Berlin.
But you
They
do
couldn't
that.
care less
You
about
seem to do that. I mean, after every album, after every tour or project, you take these bizarre trips and you go away
But
to
how,
places.
I mean, who wants to come to a city and have people come up to you and say, you know, what's happening on Mars at the moment?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, it's,
Yeah.
you've got to.
Very unlikely that would happen in Kenya.
Yeah,
Tell us
sure.
about Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about Kenya?
Are you
Well,
going to
we just
record
got
there
back.
next?
Okay, well, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect from Kenya before I got there. I mean, I went there to show my son how animals really live, that they're not always behind bars, because he's seen the Berlin Zoo and things like that, and that's about it. I mean, he's only 6, and he's only seen them in zoos, and so he got there, and then we started looking at the animals, and then I found it was a real country with real people in. It wasn't just one great big safari, and there were kinds of people that I'd never come across before, people called tribes, who led existences that they've led for 700, 800 years.
Unchanged.
Unchanged.
And also another quite humbling experience.
Completely. I was totally humiliated. I've never met such proud and tall people.
I want to ask you during that,
Honest.
and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that your time in Kenya, but I wanted to ask you about the Iggy thing. One question: was Iggy a way of letting your pop thing come out while you were making albums like Low and Heroes? I mean, were you kind of, in a sense, kind of staying disguised behind him as the producer and player to do this pop music, you know?
That's a difficult question. I guess that might have been the incentive to actually get ahead and do it, but I've been a big fan of Iggy's for a number of years. I'd never ever seen him perform, ever.
You didn't know about
The
the
first time I
razor
saw him-
blades and the glass and the peanut
Well, I
butter.
heard, you know, I
Yeah.
knew all that stuff. but,
Rumors, vicious rumors.
well, knowing Jim,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was incongruous, but actually going out on tour with him was the first time I'd ever seen him work. And that was quite a surprise.
He's amazing.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
That must have been amazing for you, though, to sit back there every night behind a piano in front of people. And I mean, you lent your name to the project. There's, there's.
But we knew that we'd have that problem from the beginning, and we knew we'd gradually back off.
How
As
did it feel
Jimmy
being a
felt
session
more
man?
assertive about what he was
How
doing.
did it feel being a session man? As Ray Davies
Fantastic.
says, not paid to
Fantastic. I had
think.
my bottle of beer and a packet of cigarettes and a piano, and I could get drunk with
great.
the band. And
I remember you wearing those thick glasses and your little Harvard law student, and you were really.
I adored it.
It was a terrific
Quite the
character.
Ivy League image,
I really
yeah.
adored it.
In both Low and Heroes, you create moods that are thought paintings that don't really require words or can get along with a mock language and not even a real tongue to get the
Absolutely.
idea across.
Yeah.
Is that what's coming? Is that what's up now?
Well,
Warm-
what
warm
happened is that I didn't have the necessary verbal equipment to describe what I was seeing, and that's where I needed assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I needed somebody to bounce ideas off and somebody to give me input, because I
Right.
was so confused with all these blessed people running around my head that I had to
Who am
do
I,
that.
huh?
So, and Eno was somebody that I'd known for years and years and never had the chance to work with.
Brian
Realized-
Eno, formerly of Roxy Music, for any of you people who don't know. I'm sorry.
and formerly of the Portsmouth Symphonia.
Ah,
Portsmouth
Leicester.
Symphony.
And many lectures. And,
Many lectures, all that. He's a
Professor of Fine Arts.
right. And you got involved with him. And he
Yeah.
had been making electronic music for,
I wouldn't like to just call it electronic music. He'd been making his own very personal music because he also used organic instruments as well, apart from. electronics.
Even Heroes, where side
Yeah.
one is so accessible that it's the finest, I think in our opinion, what you've done up to date as far as bridging that, accessibility towards that, as you would say, personal music,
Yeah, there was a lot of enthusiasm on Heroes because Brian and I liked so much what we did on Low, and we knew we had it in us to do another one, and now
yeah.
I think even a third one.
Oh, that'd be great.
I can't say. I wish we had more time to just stand here and sit here and talk. Really,
Stand
I mean, we will sit here and talk for more hours, but we have to really kind of buzz off, and that's really
That's a Canadian word for
Buzz-
station break.
Buzz off.
Yeah,
That's English.
you've
Oh, is it?
joined.
Yes.
We'll say goodbye.
How
Like
dare you.
This
Must
has
be a
been Mark
combinator.
and Howard, Flo and Eddie, and David Bowie, and I. Howard
you,
and I.
David. We
It's
can't
been
take
my
you out
very
for the
great
week.
pleasure.
Really, and we will do it again. I promise.
And I
sometime.
promise as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.